Welcome to the crossroads of the American energy revolution. Here, in the early decades of the 21st century, the forces shaping our power grid are moving with a speed and intensity unmatched since the dawn of electrification itself. But before we can understand where we're heading, let's take a moment to remember how we got here. For most of the 20th century, coal was the undisputed king of American energy. Vast mines fed power plants that lit up cities, fueled manufacturing booms, and brought comfort to millions of homes. The thick, dark plumes that rose from smokestacks became symbols of progress, but also of the environmental costs that would become impossible to ignore by the late 1900s. The emergence of nuclear energy in the mid-century offered a vision of limitless, carbon-free power, but safety concerns and high costs soon slowed its momentum. By the dawn of the 21st century, natural gas, cleaner than coal and abundant thanks to the shale revolution, stepped onto center stage, hailed as a bridge to a cleaner future. But then, something remarkable happened. Over the last 2 decades, an unprecedented technological leap and a groundswell of public concern about pollution and climate change transformed the economics of energy in ways few could have foreseen. Solar panels and wind turbines, once the stuff of environmental dreams, became cheaper and more efficient year after year. According to Lazard's most recent levelized cost of energy analysis, solar and onshore wind power have now become the lowest cost way to generate electricity in the United States, often outcompeting fossil fuels even when government incentives are stripped away. Let's put this in perspective. 2 decades ago, building a solar farm was a costly experimental project. Today, constructing a utility-scale solar farm can cost as little as $38 per megawatt hour and rarely more than $78. That's a dramatic drop, far below what many natural gas-fired power plants can match, with their costs commonly ranging from $48 up to $107 per megawatt hour. Smaller community solar arrays and gas peaker plants, which are designed for quick bursts of power during high demand, are even more expensive. This is not just a minor shift, it's a fundamental rearrangement of the American energy landscape. Yet this revolution arrives at a moment of surging demand. After nearly 2 decades of relatively flat electricity use, the country is now bracing for a tidal wave of new consumption. Why? One word: data. The explosion of data centers, those sprawling complexes that make cloud computing, artificial intelligence, and e-commerce possible, is driving a new era of energy hunger. Experts now forecast that data centers in the United States could use 3 times more electricity by the end of the next decade compared to today. Add to that the electrification of industries like transportation, from fleets of electric vehicles to factories that once ran on gas, and the scale of the challenge becomes clear. Meeting this demand will require America to add about 80 gigawatts of new power capacity every single year for the next 2 decades. That's like adding the equivalent of dozens of large power plants every year. At first glance, this sounds like a slam dunk for renewables. George Bilichik, vice chairman of Lazard and architect of their influential cost analysis, calls the annual report an invaluable resource for anyone shaping the energy future, be they policymakers, investors, or utility leaders. Fatih Birol, executive director of the International Energy Agency, is even more emphatic, declaring that the shift to clean energy is unstoppable. The IEA's latest forecasts project that by the year 2030, global renewable electricity generation could rise by nearly 90% compared to current levels. In fact, the IEA anticipates that renewables will account for as much as 80% of all new power capacity added worldwide by that year. A staggering prediction that would have seemed wildly optimistic even a decade ago. But if the economics are so strong, why isn't the country racing faster into a clean, green future? Here's where the plot thickens. The American power grid, the vast interconnected web of wires, substations, and transformers, was designed for a different era. For decades, it was built to shuttle electricity from giant centralized power plants to homes and businesses. Today, the rise of decentralized, variable renewables like wind and solar is testing the limits of this old architecture. Deborah Phillips, president of the National Electrical Manufacturers Association, warns, "Our grid wasn't designed to meet demand growth at this rate, and so we're going to have to get creative." Supply chain bottlenecks have further complicated the picture. The cost of building new natural gas plants has soared to a 10-year high, driven by delays in turbine deliveries, shortages in critical materials, and rising labor costs. Utility companies, already stretched thin by the need to replace aging infrastructure, are now scrambling to both modernize the grid and expand its capacity. In some regions, it can take up to a decade to secure permits and complete the hundreds of miles of high-voltage transmission lines needed to connect remote wind farms or solar arrays to where the power is needed most. Meanwhile, the political winds have shifted. In some quarters, support for fossil fuel projects is rising once again, fueled by concerns about reliability, national security, and the fear of blackouts during extreme weather events. Debates rage in state legislatures and corporate boardrooms over the best path forward. Ann Choate, an executive at the consulting firm ICF, captures the mood. Meeting this demand will take a coordinated effort from across the energy sector on an all-of-the-above strategy. That means not just betting on renewables, but also considering the roles of nuclear, natural gas, and even emerging technologies like advanced battery storage and hydrogen. So, with the financial case for renewables stronger than ever, why do fossil fuels still have a seat at the table? The answer lies in the details. While solar and wind are now the cheapest sources of new electricity in many places, they are not always available when we need them most. The sun does not shine at night, and the wind does not always blow on schedule. Until large-scale energy storage becomes more widespread and affordable, grid operators often rely on gas plants to provide backup power during peak demand, or when renewables drop off unexpectedly. This is the heart of the reliability debate. Critics worry that an over-reliance on intermittent renewables could make the grid more fragile, especially as demand soars. Extreme weather events, such as the Texas winter storm of 2021, when millions lost power for days, have fueled fears that a rapid transition could leave customers in the dark. Proponents of renewables counter that modernizing the grid with smart systems, advanced forecasting, and distributed energy resources can actually make the system more resilient, not less. Consider the example of California, a state that has aggressively pursued renewable energy targets for years. On some sunny afternoons, solar panels now generate more electricity than the state can use, forcing grid operators to curtail production or export power to neighboring states. At other times, sudden drops in solar output, such as when clouds pass overhead, require rapid response backup from gas plants or batteries. The lesson? Managing a high renewable grid is as much about flexibility and coordination as it is about capacity. The stakes could not be higher. If the transition to renewables stalls, the risks are profound. Data centers, whose energy appetite is expected to triple in the coming decade, could end up relying on expensive and polluting power sources. This would strain not only the grid, but also drive up costs for businesses and consumers, while locking in higher emissions for years to come. Supply chain setbacks or policy reversals could leave entire regions tied to outdated technology, missing out on cleaner air and the potential for billions of dollars in savings. But the flip side is just as dramatic. Embracing renewables at scale is not only good for the environment, it is a once-in-a-generation economic opportunity. Clean energy means new jobs in manufacturing, installation, and maintenance across all 50 states. It means building resilient, modern infrastructure that can withstand the storms and heat waves of a changing climate. And, crucially, it means lower power bills for everyone, from families trying to make ends meet to the tech giants powering the digital economy. So, what actually needs to happen to make this vision a reality? According to Deborah Phillips of NEMA, our grid was not designed to meet demand growth at this rate, and so we are going to have to get creative. That creativity will take many forms. First, the nation must invest heavily in modernizing the grid, adding hundreds of miles of new high-voltage transmission lines to connect distant renewables to cities, upgrading substations, and deploying advanced sensors and control systems that can balance supply and demand in real time. Second, battery storage must move from the fringes to the mainstream. Already, states like Texas and California are installing massive battery systems capable of storing enough electricity to power hundreds of thousands of homes for hours at a stretch. These batteries can smooth out the ups and downs of renewable generation, providing a critical bridge during cloudy days or windless nights. Third, smart software and artificial intelligence are set to play an increasingly important role. By predicting demand spikes and automatically adjusting the flow of electricity, these digital tools can help utilities operate more efficiently, avoid outages, and integrate more renewables than ever thought possible. But even the best technology is useless without the right policies and incentives. Strategic investment from both the public and private sectors is needed to spur innovation, break through permitting logjams, and ensure that clean energy projects can be built quickly and affordably. The Inflation Reduction Act, passed in recent years, has poured billions of dollars into renewable energy and grid upgrades, creating momentum. but much more will be needed to meet America's soaring energy needs. For everyday Americans, this transition is not just a matter of abstract policy debates. It will reshape the way we live, work, and think about energy. Homeowners are increasingly looking to install rooftop solar panels or join community solar programs to lower their bills and increase their independence. Investors and entrepreneurs are rushing into clean tech startups, sensing a tidal wave of opportunity. And young people entering the workforce are finding new career paths in engineering, construction, and data analysis, fields that will drive the energy grid of tomorrow. George Bilichik of Lazard underscores the importance of accurate, up-to-date information. The levelized cost of energy is an invaluable resource for industry stakeholders and policymakers. Only by relying on transparent, rigorous data can decision-makers chart a path that balances affordability, reliability, and environmental responsibility. So what is holding America back from fully unlocking the renewable era? The answer is not cost. Renewables are already the cheapest option in most cases, even without subsidies. It's not technology. Innovation is moving at a breathtaking pace. The real bottleneck is the grid itself, an aging, fragmented patchwork of infrastructure that struggles to keep up with 21st century demands. Permitting delays, local opposition to new transmission lines, and the sheer complexity of interconnecting thousands of new energy sources are slowing progress at precisely the moment we need to accelerate. Policy is another battleground. In some states, ambitious renewable portfolio standards and clean energy mandates are driving rapid growth. In others, resistance to change, lobbying from fossil fuel interests, and fears about reliability are slowing the transition. The result? A patchwork of progress, where some regions race ahead while others lag behind. But history teaches us that technological revolutions are rarely smooth. When rural electrification swept across the United States in the early 20th century, it took decades of public investment, political wrangling, and the hard work of millions to bring light to every home. The build-out of the interstate highway system in the 1950s and 60s was another feat of national ambition and coordination. The clean energy transition will demand the same resolve, the same willingness to think big and act boldly. The International Energy Agency offers 3 possible futures for the United States electricity sector by the middle of this century. The first, dominant renewables, envisions a world where renewables provide 80% or more of all electricity, supported by a vastly expanded grid and advanced storage systems. The second, balanced transition, sees natural gas maintaining a significant role alongside renewables, with technologies like carbon capture helping to limit emissions. The third, stalled progress, warns of a future where policy reversals and missed opportunities leave America dependent on fossil fuels, with higher costs and greater risks for the climate. Which path we choose is still up for grabs. Fatih Birol sums it up. The transition to clean energy is happening worldwide and it is unstoppable. But how fast and how far we go is up to us. Here's a little-known but critical fact. Recent research suggests that if America prioritizes upgrading its grid, it could supply 80% or more of its electricity from renewables before the middle of this century, while actually lowering overall electricity costs. That means cleaner air, healthier communities, and a more resilient economy, all while saving money. But none of this will happen automatically. The clean energy revolution requires bold leadership at every level, from the White House to city halls, from utility boardrooms to local communities. It demands smarter infrastructure, faster permitting, and a willingness to embrace new ideas and technologies. And it needs Americans everywhere to get informed, get involved, and make their voices heard. For viewers watching this, the question is not just what policymakers or CEOs will do, but what role you can play. Are you considering solar panels for your home? Are you interested in a career in clean energy? Are you ready to advocate for smarter, cleaner infrastructure in your community? Every choice, every conversation, every vote matters. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more in-depth insights into the future.